And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative citizens across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You're the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for, and we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd really appreciate it if you'd also help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Well, today we are rounding out the rest of our readout on the special session on crime. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. Before we get into where all the legislation shook out, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Proverbs chapter 17, verses 27 and 28. And it says, "Can you bridle your tongue when your heart is under pressure? That's how you show that you are wise. An understanding heart keeps you cool, calm, and collected no matter what you're facing. When even a fool bites his tongue, he's considered wise. So shut your mouth when you're provoked. It will make you look smart." And here on this show, we can often be found encouraging people to use their voices, to speak up, and to not be silent. But we know that there are times in life that call us to keep our mouths closed, too. It's wisdom to know the difference between the right time to speak and the right time to remain quiet. I looked up in a few translations to see how else an understanding heart was described. And it was translated as a cool spirit, a calm spirit, a person of understanding, self-control, and an even temper. And I think this really goes back to what we talked about recently, that when we know our identity in Christ and we have a right view of God, we can't easily be moved off target. It's not about self-promotion anymore. It's not about self-protection anymore. It's that strong assurance, that confidence in God and in who He says that we are, that allows us to keep cool in pressurized situations. So I hope that encourages you today.
It's interesting, Danielle. I've always had a tendency, and I know other people have the same tendency, when they feel like they've been slighted, or when someone says something that they feel is unjust or unfair, or maybe even they perceive it as some kind of a personal attack, even if it's not. People are so eager to sort of immediately vindicate themselves, immediately rehabilitate whatever lost image they may have had in the eyes of people who may have heard what was said about them or whatever. But that is such the tendency for us to immediately become defensive and immediately respond or react, and sort of to vindicate on some level our own honor or our own esteem. And when we do it that way, very often we do it in a way that is not productive, that is not fruitful, and usually ends up causing more damage than good. And so to be able to remain cool and calm under the serenity of the Holy Spirit, and then maybe once you've reflected upon whatever the issue is, then respond. Usually that is much more fruitful and much more healing, not only for you, but for the other party, the other person as well. And really, it's only under the influence of grace that we can do that.
It's true. And, I think there's this saying about responding instead of reacting. And I think it's that kind of knee-jerk reaction you're talking about that tends to get us in trouble. But if we know who we are, who do we have? We don't need to defend ourselves before anyone if we know who we are in Christ. So I really love that.
Well, Jesus, yeah. And Jesus said, Danielle, it's very clear in Isaiah that even though he was treated harshly, he submitted and opened not his mouth. So Jesus really is the ultimate example of someone who stood in, really an atmosphere of tremendous hostility and abuse, and yet still did not feel the need to defend himself or vindicate himself. That is what you call perfect serenity. Now, we can spend our whole lives trying to aspire to that level of self-mastery, and very few of us will ever get there. But it certainly is an aspirational ideal to strive to when we look at the example of Christ in that moment. But anyway, moving on to the criminal session just passed, Danielle. We have 10, 12, 15 bills, I guess, that we need to talk about. Well, how did we come out?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start us out with some statistics. We have some pretty fun ones. So we weighed in heavily on 21 pieces of legislation this session. Of those 21, 5 had a companion bill or very similar legislation. So that left us with about 16 bills. Now, of the 16 bills that we followed very closely, we supported 8 and we opposed 8. That's a happy coincidence. Now, of the ones that we supported, 7 out of the 8 that we supported passed.
Yay.
I know. 1 that we supported failed. 2 that we opposed were killed. And 6 that we opposed passed. And then just to break it down a little bit further, of the ones that we opposed that passed, 1 of those we expect to see fixed in the regular session. That's the concealed carry liability bill that we talked about pretty extensively in the last episode. We've gotten even better feedback on that, I think, since that episode was released. So I feel like we're in a stronger position and excited to see something brought to fix that in just a couple weeks. And then 2 of the remaining bills that we opposed were much, much less offensive now than they were going into the session. They've been amended to be less horrible. So that's a positive right there. And then 3 out of the 6 that we opposed that still passed, we still hate. And so we'll try and tackle
and
those.
And the hatred has been in no measure mitigated.
No, it hasn't. It really hasn't. But we're sticking to our guns on those. So let's jump into it, Chris.
No pun intended.
Of the ones that we supported and passed, like I said, 7 out of the 8 that we supported passed. The first one we talked about very extensively in the last episode. That's SB 1. That's Blake Miguez's constitutional carry bill, passed overwhelmingly. Chris, you testified in support of this. And we're not going to get into it anymore today. If you missed out on that, just check out the last episode. We had lots and lots of thoughts to share about that one. And then the next one is House Bill 1 by Representative Bacala. It was a transparency bill, and we supported it with a request for amendment. It has passed. It's been sent to the governor for signature. No Republicans voted against it. No Democrats voted for it. Jay Galley was absent in the House for this vote. Mike Facey was absent in the Senate. And I just want to put a disclaimer for this whole episode right now that the bills passed in such strong measure that any absences, we're not counting against people. We're not in any way passing judgment. I think people had reasonable assurance that these bills were going to go the way that they went when they either chose or stepped out of the room for the vote. So we're not counting this against them. We're keeping tabs on it just in case there starts to be a little bit of a habit formed that we need to pick up on. So that's the only real reason we're even mentioning some of these absences, but really they passed in such strong measure. It's of no consequence.
Right, and we're always going to mention the absence. As far as I'm concerned, an important part of our job is to note the legislators who, particularly the Republican legislators who were absent for a vote, and that's just as important as registering how they voted if they did in fact vote. And of course, you're right, Danielle, that there's nothing nefarious to be drawn into a Republican absence in every case, and certainly not on bills that are probably going to go through overwhelmingly anyway. but it's because we want to keep an eye on it to see if a pattern develops going forward. That's the only reason why we're keeping an eye on it. But on HB1, a very, very good bill, and as you said, Danielle, passed, it's going to create a centralized criminal database, a very extensive criminal database where Louisiana citizens can go and find out information about felony criminal cases in Louisiana. Citizens are very frustrated. Well, they're frightened and they're frustrated. They're frightened about the high escalating crime in Louisiana, and they're very frustrated that they don't really feel like they have any way to go and learn what's going on with cases that may concern them across the state, whether they're drug cases or murder cases, white collar crime cases. This is a database where they can go and learn what is going on, what a defendant has been charged with, how much drugs were found on the person, whether or not the case was pled down to a misdemeanor or dismissed, and if so, why. So it's a way to create transparency into the criminal justice system, and also a way to hold prosecutors and judges accountable in cases where, according to the judgment of citizens, maybe the outcome of a case was not what comported with justice in the eyes of the citizens. And we have to remember that all of these leaders are accountable to us. So if they're accountable to us, what they do in their official capacity as representatives of us should all be an open record to us. And that's what HB1 does. It just creates a database that allows us to go in and really see what's going on in our criminal justice system. I think it is so well deserved and past time that we have this. And Danielle, we did request an amendment on this bill to specifically include the affidavit of probable cause. But upon checking the bill and talking with two of the reps, the language minutes, they defined minutes in the bill as any information provided to the clerk of court regarding arrest or summons information. So the affidavit of probable cause goes directly to the arrest. So that language in the bill would implicitly include the affidavit of probable cause. So our concern was addressed, and it is a very, very good piece of legislation. And I think something that would make John Toops quite proud.
Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty happy about this one. And Chris, as you were speaking just now, it occurred to me that this is also going to help local law enforcement and, frankly, anyone at the state level as well see some trends about the kind of crimes that are being committed in a way that allows them to help target funding, target the efforts of their local forces, and best utilize resources. So I think there's going to be a lot of benefit to being able to really see things clearly and just being able to sort by certain crimes. So I don't want us to necessarily spend any more time on this one, but I think this is a very good thing for our state, and especially for those who are concerned about the direction of crime in our state, to be able to keep up with some of the direction of how things are going.
Absolutely. And it's certainly going to allow voting citizens to be able to determine whether or not they want to reelect DAs and judges based on how they're presiding over and how they're handling these cases.
Yeah, and it'll help people like us who are keeping track of what those DAs and judges are doing come time for their reelection.
Come time to meet the Grim Reaper.
All right, HB2, also by Representative Bacala. This one was to do with civil immunity for police officers. This one we also supported with request for an amendment. It passed, and again, it was a straight party line vote. Senators Facey and Miguez were absent in the Senate.
Yeah. House Bill 2, police officers who are engaged in their work, their official duties, they are immune from civil liability for any action arising out of their official work as long as they don't act with intentional misconduct. In other words, they're not intentionally trying to do something wrong or create or break a federal or criminal law, deliberately violate the law. So this is a good bill, Danielle, and I think it's going to allow police officers to do their job without having any kind of a chilling effect on them. That they're faced with a lot of very difficult situations, very tense moments where they have to make split second decisions. We can't have them second guessing every time they have to make a decision. Is this 100% right? Do I know for sure what this is or whatever? Because if I get it wrong, I'm going to be sued and lose my family, and so it's very important that these exceptions to liability be in there. They are. I think it's a good bill. Very glad that this passed.
And maybe just moving on to the next one, House Bill 7 by Representative Schlegel. It was increasing the mandatory minimum sentence for carjacking. This one we also supported and it's passed. It had overwhelming support in the House with 89 voting in favor and only 15 opposing it. There were 19 Democrats who joined with the Republicans supporting it, and that's in the House, sorry, and all but 4 Democrats in the Senate voted for it. And in the Senate, Senators Presley and Klein Peter were absent for the vote.
Yeah, and as we said, we're not holding it against Klein, Peter, and Presley for being absent for these votes. Carjacking, Danielle, is a horrible, horrible crime. I've represented on a couple of occasions people who were accused of carjacking, and we didn't think that they were guilty of it. But what they were accused of doing was just unbelievable. I mean, you go up to someone's car when they're at a stoplight or a stop sign, usually with a gun, either demand that they get out of the car or bash their driver's side window in, jerk them out of the car with a gun in your hand, throw them on the ground, get in their car, and take off in their vehicle. That's the kind of crime right there that traumatizes people for their whole lives. And this bill here, HB 7, that stiffens the penalties for carjacking, we are 100% in favor of, and are very glad that passed with little or no controversy in both chambers.
Yep. And Representative Schlegel also brought House Bill 8, and that one increases the mandatory minimum sentence for anyone marketing or distributing fentanyl in a way that appeals to minors. We obviously strongly supported this. It passed both chambers and had a total of 45 co-sponsors. This one was very, very strongly supported. It was sent to the governor for signature, and in the House, it was voted on 91-13. Larry Bagley was absent. There were 19 Democrats who joined the Republicans, and it was unanimous in the Senate. Senators Seabaugh and Facey were absent for that vote.
Not a surprise here that all the Republicans and many of the Democrats would have gone on board here. We're talking here about a crime whereby these sick individuals actually package and brand fentanyl in such a way that it's uniquely appealing to children. Now, get your arms around that. What kind of a sick personality would do something like that? It's just unbelievable. I've often wondered, what is the psychological progression from childhood to adulthood that produces a mentality that could even conceive of doing something like that, much less actually do it? I do not know. I cannot put my arms around it. And frankly, I don't even know if I want to put my arms around it. The bottom line is it is a very sick and twisted crime. And anybody who is convicted of doing that should spend between 50 and 90 years in prison. So I think it's an appropriate sentence. I'm glad it passed. And hopefully people who are wanting to market fentanyl to our precious children will think twice about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you that the person has to be pretty depraved at the point that they're willing to do that. So I hope that it serves as a deterrent, but I hope that we also see some stepped up enforcement against fentanyl at the border where it's coming in. So let's just head it off at the pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie said the other day when this was passed, she said, you know what? I'm not sure that I would want to limit this just to children. I think it should be anything. But I said, you know what? Maybe you're right, Katie, but the kids are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe we'll switch to the next one that we supported that passed. It was Senate Bill 9 by Senator Mizell, and it adds newly discovered photographic or video evidence as admissible past the statute of limitations in a rape case. That's in addition to the discovery of DNA evidence, which is already provided for in present law. Chris, we supported this with a suggested amendment. And as I think I mentioned, this one has been passed, and it passed unanimously in both houses.
Yeah. This bill, as you said, Danielle, will extend the normal statute of limitations for prosecuting a sex case if photographic evidence is discovered after the statute of limitations has passed and could not have otherwise been discovered before. The concern that we had with the bill earlier, and the reason why we wanted an amendment, was that it looked like the way it was written was that it could be 10, 15 years down the line in a sex case, 20 years down the line, and a DA looks up one day and says, hey, I got this evidence and I want to go ahead and reopen this case and prosecute it again. Well, the DA has to have some standard of diligence in producing discovery. He cannot be simply lazy and not diligent and lets the statute of limitation go by and doesn't prosecute a case and then decides years later that he wants to do it. So he says, well, I found this evidence. That's not what the bill is intended for. Senator Mizell made that very clear in her committee testimony. The bill was not specifically amended to provide for this, but the way it's written, clearly, if there was ever any question about this, you could go back and look at Senator Mizell's legislative testimony so we could get the intent of her bill, which clearly is designed to facilitate a prosecution in cases where the statute of limitations has run and new photographic evidence is discovered that really could not have been discovered reasonably during the normal statute of limitations. So therefore, it would be extended and you can prosecute in the interest of justice for the victim. And I understand that. So we're satisfied with the bill. We think it's appropriately postured at this point. And has SB 9 been signed yet, Danielle?
I am not sure. I know that it has been sent to the governor. I'm not sure if he signed it yet. I hadn't seen where he had signed any last time I looked, but I did not look today.
Okay. So he's still looking at him anyway. Yeah. So it's a good bill, and Senator Mizell was very receptive to my concerns when I spoke to her down outside the committee room.
Wonderful. Now, SB 10 was by Senator Cathy, and it reduces available good time credits for an inmate convicted of killing a first responder. We supported this. It has also been sent to the governor for signature in the Senate. It was a 30/7 vote. 3 Democrats joined in support. They were Gerald Boudreaux, Cleo Fields, and Katrina Jackson. And Bob Owen was absent, and so was Jay Luno. In the House, it was 96-8. 23 Democrats joined the Republicans in support of Senator Cathy's bill.
A great bill, and really should be an absolute no-brainer to anybody. If you are convicted of, while you're in commission of a crime of killing a cop in the line of duty, you should be denied parole, period. I'm with them, and I agree with it.
Yeah. I'm glad there really is some good common sense legislation that passed this go round.
Absolutely.
The next one that we supported, unfortunately, failed. It was House Bill 14 by Representative Wright. It opened the door for someone, or it would have opened the door for someone who had a previous conviction that was later arrested again to be named as a dangerous offender if it fit the situation. It was unfortunately never heard in committee. I think, frankly, there was a lot of prioritizing that had to happen in this very tight time frame for a special session. So that one just didn't make it through.
Yeah. Well, our criminal laws in Louisiana are already very, very stiff on dangerous offenders. The DAs already have a lot of flexibility when it comes to dangerous offenders. All this bill would have said that if you arrest somebody for any felony crime and the DA can show that he has a prior conviction for a crime of violence then in the new charge, in the new what they call bill of information, the charging instrument, they can allege that we're dealing with a quote dangerous offender, and that would have an effect on his ultimate sentencing disposition at the end of the case. We didn't have a problem with the bill. We thought it was actually a pretty good bill, but for some reason it didn't get out. We weren't pushing it, vigorously, but it did not get through the Criminal Justice Committee. In fact, it wasn't, as you said, Danielle, I don't even think this was even voted on.
No, it was never heard in committee.
Yeah. So either way, the criminal laws that prosecute defendants in Louisiana are already pretty strong, and the failure of this bill to get out of committee is not going to do much to change that.
Right. Yep. Now, moving on to the bills that we opposed. There were two bills that we opposed and they failed, which is fantastic. The first is House Bill 15 by Representative Boyd, and it basically would have ended the statute of limitations on a rape case. As I said, we opposed this, and it was referred, so it made it out of the House. It was referred to Senate Judiciary C, but it was never presented there.
Yeah. And this bill, HB 15, not a good bill. It had to do with third degree rape. Obviously, I find third degree rape or any kind of rape absolutely abhorrent. But I don't think that there should be an open ended statute of limitations to prosecute any crime, whether it's third degree rape or anything else. And this bill would have done just that because it would have extended the statute of limitations until the alleged victim, quote, discovered the crime. Discovered the crime. Well, that could be 30 years from the alleged crime when there's no evidence left and the witnesses are gone. It was not a good bill. There has got to be some reasonable, definitive time frame within which to operate. No citizen should exist under the specter of any criminal prosecution permanently. That's a violation of due process, and it's a violation of basic fairness. So we cannot pass a bill that says basically you can go file charges against a young man for third degree rape 25 or 30 or 40 years after it happened because you now have discovered it. That's not with no standards and no context. So I'm so happy that bill was killed. It would have been a terrible bill, and I hope it never, ever comes back. We have to come up with a nickname for that one.
Well, and as we discussed originally, this makes a lot of sense for minors who experience some extraordinary amount of trauma in such a situation that they might be able to bring a suit later in life. But for adults, it doesn't make sense, and it puts young men in a terrible position as they get older. So we're very happy that one didn't pass. But another one that didn't pass is House Bill 13 by Representative Wright. We opposed this one as well. It was a forfeiture of good time credits. It never even got a hearing in the House Committee on Administration of Criminal Justice. My personal view is that Representative Villio brought something quite similar, and she's the chair of the committee, so she probably chose to promote her own legislation instead. But we're very happy that this one did not make it out. That was another bad bill.
Yeah. And the reason why it was a bad bill is because it would have mandated the forfeiture of good time credits, mandated the forfeiture of good time credits in felony cases under certain circumstances. And we don't believe that there should be any automatic forfeiture of good time credits, for good behavior, because we believe that those decisions should be made by a parole board that's duly constituted to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. It's the same reason why we opposed Villio's bills on the very same issue. But we're glad this one failed. We opposed it, again, for the same reasons we opposed the others.
Yeah, because we believe in incentivizing good behavior and incentivizing personal reform. So it's a shame that it wasn't, that people didn't view it in that light, but we'll get to Villio's pretty soon. Now, of the ones that we opposed, four that we opposed passed. The first one was SB2. It was the liability for concealed carriers. We mentioned that pretty extensively last episode. As I mentioned, Chris, you testified against this in committee, I believe in the Senate. And we are still looking to get it fixed in the regular session. We've gotten good feedback on the possibility of that happening. So we think that this will not be a long-term loss, just a short-term incremental gain, we'll call it.
We've raised awareness about it. Yeah, we've raised awareness about it, Danielle, of SB2. They know what we're looking for, and they have expressed pretty strong inclination to go in and clean up SB2, which discriminates against permitless concealed carriers as far as their liability protection. We're going to get that fixed. Go back and listen to our last podcast for a more in-depth discussion on both SB1 and SB2.
Yeah, and Chris, just a question for you on that one. Does it also discriminate against open carriers? It may.
You know what? To be honest with you, Danielle, I think it probably does discriminate against open carriers because open carriers are not
they're not permitted.
right, right. So you could make an argument that it does. Yes, you could make an argument that it does.
So we should get that included in the fix.
Absolutely. We should get that included in the fix. In other words, because they are also lawful constitutional carriers in Louisiana.
Exactly. Great. Well, we'll add that to our list. I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. Now, HB4 by Representative Emerson, this is one we pretty strongly opposed from the outset. It was set to divest authority and discretion away from the DAs and the judges. We said that in our view, it's a wrong solution to having corrupt or ineffective DAs or judges. The correct solution in our view was to change out the DAs and the judges. This one, unfortunately, did pass. It has been sent to the governor for signature. It was a party line vote in the House. All the Republicans were in favor. Larry Bagley was absent. Party line vote in the Senate. All Republicans are in favor. All Dems opposed, 28-11. But it's not as bad as it was, Chris.
It's not as bad as it was because we were able on the floor to pressure for the reinsertion of the original rule, which said that an application for post-conviction relief can be submitted after the normal 2-year deadline if new evidence is discovered that was previously unavailable. And then it has to be filed within 2 years of the discovery. That was taken out and then put back in, which makes the bill better and a better instrument of justice than it was before. I still do not like the idea of DAs and judges ever being divested of the traditional discretion that they have to make decisions in individual cases. I don't think that is divesting them of their authority is the solution to the problem of bad DAs or bad judges. There are other solutions to that. It's not a legislative function, but Danielle, because of a lot of pressure, we were able to get a good provision of law put back in the bill, which says anytime you discover new evidence that you couldn't have gotten before, the statute of limitations gets extended and then you can go file and get relief. So it's not nearly as bad a bill as it was when it first started. You are right.
Perfect. And another bill that's not nearly as bad as it was when it first started is Senate Bill A brought by Senator Reese. It was attempting to establish a state public defender's office. We strongly oppose this. I know, Chris, you testified against it, as did a number of people. We're still not in love with it. It's in a lot better shape than when it started. The House voted in favor of it. On party lines, rather. One Republican opposed it. That's Representative Beth Billings. And one Democrat voted in support of it. That was Robbie Carter. And in the Senate, the breakdown was 27 in favor, 12 against. One Republican opposed there as well in the Senate. That was Senator Greg Miller.
Yeah. This bill, Danielle, as it started off, would have placed the entire office of the indigent public defender system in Louisiana, the office that's responsible for defending poor people in Louisiana when they're accused of crimes. And it's a big office, and it runs statewide, the Indigent Defender Office. And it would have been put entirely into the governor's office and made a part of the governor's office under a czar, a state public defender that the governor would appoint to run it in his office. We had major, major constitutional and ethical concerns about putting that office and that agency under the unilateral direction of the governor, who performs a very different constitutional function than the public defender's office does. And as my brother Royal testified very, very clearly, who does public defender work, would have created enormous and inescapable conflicts of interest between the governor and the public defender's office that is responsible for ensuring that the basic constitutional rights of criminal defendants are protected when they're accused of crimes. So very important. So we railed on that and railed on that and railed on that. We don't want the governor to have a unilateral authority over all of this. So one of the amendments on the Senate floor was the creation of an oversight board made up of 9 individuals chosen from various backgrounds and walks of life to oversee the budget, to oversee the finances, to oversee the policy within the state of the public defender system. And the governor now, at least theoretically, does not have unilateral control over the conduct and functioning of the public defender system in Louisiana. Would we rather this bill didn't even exist at all? Yes, because do we believe that the governor's office should be totally independent from the functions and workings of the indigent defender system in Louisiana? Absolutely. Do we believe that there's a separation of powers issue that's created here? Absolutely. But we have to acknowledge that the bill is in better position than it was before because of this oversight board that has been created, and which will, at least theoretically and hopefully in reality, check the governor and exercise its authority to protect the indigent defender system, even at times when they have to go against what the governor wants. And that's the whole purpose of having an oversight board. That's why they call it an oversight board. We'll see how it works out. I don't know how it's going to work out, but at least it's there.
Well, Chris, does the oversight board have the authority to audit the decision making that happens?
Well, I don't know whether they're going to have the ability to audit or overrule necessarily the decision of the state public defender, but they certainly will be able to raise questions. They certainly will be able to raise public awareness. And there are, again, when it comes to policy and how the public defender's office is going to be run, those determinations are supposed to be made by the board in a majority vote. The issue is that 4 of the 9 members are appointed by the governor, and the governor appoints the chairman. And so he's already got significant stroke on the board because of the number of appointments and the fact that he's appointing the chairman. However, 2 of the members will come from a majority vote of the Louisiana Supreme Court. one of which will be a retired judge of their choosing, and one of which will be a representative of the Juvenile Justice Office. Another member will be chosen from three nominees, three statewide district public defenders who are already in the battle now. One of three will be chosen to serve. Another one will be appointed by the Speaker of the House, another one by the President of the Senate. So that pretty much rounds that out. Hopefully they have good members on there who understand the importance of maintaining the integrity and the independence of the public defender office. I hope that they're able to do it. Again, the big concern we have, even as the bill is currently postured, which is better, is how closely aligned it is under the influence of the governor. And I just do not think that's a good idea. I think that's a recipe for potential corruption and a recipe for really, really making the public defender system something that is less vigorous and less passionately dedicated to its original mission, which is constitutionally sufficient defense for the poor. That's my concern.
Yeah, and we'll be keeping an eye on that as those appointments get made, and I know that Royal will keep us posted on how it's working.
Yes.
Great. Well, now on to Senate Bill 3/Senate Bill 11. So Senator Cloud brought SB 3, Senator Kathy brought SB 11. Both aim to change the definition of child, so offenders as young as 17 could be prosecuted as an adult. We strongly oppose that because, I mean, we just talked about their brains are not necessarily fully matured, that kids can't really understand fully the impact of their decisions, especially I think in this those like the computer games that kids play where they don't really, I think it takes away the impact of some of these decisions that they make, like you can undo it on a video game, you can't undo it in real life. Anyway, we strongly oppose this. Chris, you testified it again. You testified against both bills. Senator Kathy voluntarily deferred his bill, ostensibly because Senator Clouds was moving faster. They basically did the same thing, as far as I understand. Senator Clouds passed in the Senate 30-9. All of the Republicans were in favor. Jay Luno and Ed Price joined the Republicans to support it. It passed in the House 74-26. No Republicans opposed. There was a couple absent. They were Beryl Amity, Brett Guyman, and Philip Tarver. A couple Democrats also joined the Republicans in support. They were Roy Adams, Robbie Carter, Travis Johnson, and Dustin Miller.
Yeah, this is a terrible bill. And I told Senator Cloud that I thought it was a bad bill. I testified against it right in front of her. And here's why it's a bad bill. It is not a good idea to mandate in every case that every 17-year-old felony offender in Louisiana, no matter what the crime is, to be prosecuted with adults in an adult system and housed with adult hardened criminals during their sentence. That is not good. I could have supported the legislation if they had narrowed it to crimes of violence or other specifically enumerated and particularly heinous crimes. We could have done that. But this is way too broad. Many of our juvenile offenders, 17-year-old juvenile offenders, A, are not habitual offenders, B, are not habitually violent offenders. They make mistakes and sometimes very serious mistakes, and they should not be prosecuted in the in the adult criminal justice system in Louisiana. And I just find it. And do you know why, Danielle? I think this legislation had much more to do with let's stand up and beat our chest. We're tough on crime, and not really much to do with what really is just and good and is going to produce the results we want. You know what brought that home to me is when I'm watching the Senate debate down there and Katrina Jackson offers an amendment. I say, okay, the legislation is going to pass. Every 17-year-old who commits a felony gets prosecuted as an adult and jailed in an adult facility. She said, well, can we at least do this? If they're 17 years old when they get convicted and go off to DOC, can they at least be housed in a separate facility, a separate wing until they turn 18-year-olds, and then they can go in with the general adult criminal population? And they shot that down too. So if that tells me more than anything else, and I'm not getting into anybody's motives, that tells me that many of them are so caught up in being able to say that I'm tough on crime, tough on crime, tough on crime, that they completely forget what the real implications are of what they are doing. And I can guarantee you that this legislation will do nothing to reduce violent crime in Louisiana, whether it's among juveniles or adults. And also, it is going to end up it's probably going to end up producing more criminals and better criminals in the younger age group because they're going to be exposed to and incarcerated with hardened, convicted felons who are going to teach them how to be better criminals. This is a bad bill. It should have been more narrow, but it wasn't. Unfortunately, it passed. I made no bones about the fact that I thought it was a bad bill, but it's probably going to be signed by the governor. But nobody's going to be able to say that they didn't hear it here first when this has a worse effect on crime than a better one.
That's right. I had a really hard time with this one, and frankly, we've had a hard time with this one and the last two. So let me get to that next one. It's House Bill 9 by Representative Villio. It takes away power from the Department of Corrections and the parole board to recommend parole. We did not mention this one during our overview, but it's one that we weighed in on a little bit later during the session. The House voted in support of it 71-33. The only Republican, Chris, voting against it was Barbara Freiberg, which puts us in very unusual company. In the Senate, it was a straight party line vote, 28-11.
Yes, this is a rare and somewhat alarming alignment.
I know
with
you may
the
see a
Representative
unicorn.
Barbara.
You may see a unicorn in your front yard next.
I mean, I think it's coming here. Well, I guess we have to give congratulations when congratulations are due. Barbara Freiberg apparently was the only Republican in the House who was able to recognize that eviscerating the good time system for good behavior for inmates and eviscerating the parole system, which actually does work in Louisiana, is not going to do anything to reduce violent crime in Louisiana, and is probably going to end up making things a lot worse because it's going to destroy the hope of inmates across the state who are building themselves up to become better people, to live better lives so that they can be rehabilitated and released from jail. And so we're not spending $100,000, $200,000 a year on each of them for the rest of their lives, and they can become productive members of society. This is an awful bill. I understand the intention behind it. We're tough on crime and we want to keep people in jail. But again, the implications were not thought through at all. There is no connection between our current parole system in Louisiana and violent crime. None. It's gonna hurt people who are incarcerated. It's gonna destroy their incentive to do better, and it's gonna create a millions and millions and millions of dollars of burden on the taxpayers that we shouldn't have to pay.
Well, Chris, the real problem with crime are the criminals that are not in jail, not the criminals that are in jail. Am I off base on that?
Oh yeah, that's correct. But they're saying that it would increase crime more. They're saying the argument they're
it's a
basically
completely
making.
separate issue.
It is a separate issue, but the reason why she's doing this is because she's saying that unless we eviscerate the parole system and just keep them in there forever, they're going to get out and then they're going to go and commit crimes. So we're keeping our citizens safe by doing this. Well, apparently she hasn't studied the parole system. It's one of the few facets of the criminal justice system in Louisiana that typically works quite well. And the rare parolee who gets out and is allowed to rejoin society is usually quite good and quite effective and becomes, again, a productive member of society. No connection between the parole system and violent crime. But again, we're going to stand up and we're going to beat ourselves on the chest and talk about how tough on crime we are. But we're not going to look and see what the actual implications are of the legislation we're passing and whether or not it will actually do anything to achieve the objectives we want to achieve. And HB 9 does not do that. It's a bad bill. It's a harmful bill. It's a harmful bill.
It is. And I'm really hopeful, Chris, that this crime database that Representative Bacala brought will be a good window into checking those DAs who are not putting criminals behind bars and instead keep putting them out on the streets, because the people who are committing crimes are the people that are out on the street committing crimes, not the people who have already been locked up. That's where the state's focus needs to be. That's where law enforcement's focus needs to be. It's certainly where the state legislature's focus needs to be. Maybe they need to focus some time on putting some pressure, some positive pressure on the DAs to do their jobs if they're not doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of things that can be done there for sure. Danielle, I want our state to be safe. I want our people to be able to walk down the street, go to dinner with their families, even in New Orleans or wherever, and feel safe. And so when I look at this criminal legislation, I always want to ask two questions. A, is it going to make our state safer? And B, is it consistent with basic fairness and consistent with the Constitution? That's what I look at. I'm not just, you and I are not just going to look at a piece of legislation and say, oh man, this one's going to result in locking more people up. Let's go for it. You know why? Because we're tough on crime. I'm never going to do that. I think that does an injustice to the rule of law. I think it does injustice to humanity and injustice to basic fairness. And I'm never doing that.
Yeah. Well, one bill that's not dissimilar to HB 9 is HB 10 that Representative Villio also brought, not very far off base from the first one. It's reducing time off for good behavior. Chris, you testified against this. The House voted strict party lines on it again, almost, except our new friend, Barbara Freiberg, was opposed to it. In the Senate, it was 27-12. The only Republican who voted against it there was Senator Franklin Foyle.
Well, Senator Franklin Foyle and Senator Barbara Freiberg both deserve
Don't promote Barbara Freiberg. We can be on the same side, but we don't also have to promote her.
No, I'm not going to promote her, but I will send her an email and tell her that I noticed, because I probably will never ever have the opportunity for the rest of my career to do it. So why not take advantage of it and say, look, you voted the right way on this, and I thank you for it. And Senator Foyle was smart enough to see it. When I testified, Danielle, against SB 10 down there before the House Criminal Justice Committee, I said, why is the legislature divesting a duly constituted parole board made up of men and women from all walks of life that are very conservative and very vigilant in the way that they evaluate these cases to see if they're going to give someone parole? And they're very rarely granted. Why would you take that authority away from a parole board and give it to yourselves and make these blanket rules that only in the rarest of cases, after somebody serves 85% of their sentence, are they eligible for parole consideration? Why are you in a better position to make this determination than a parole board that has been doing its job quite well and knows how to make these decisions in the interest of justice, in the interest of the victim, in the interest of the inmate who wants to get out and become a more productive member of society and quit being a burden to the taxpayer. Why are you in the best position to make this? Well, I testified down there, and they had all the opportunities in the world to answer the question, and I didn't get an answer to my question about why they would ever do something like this. No answer to the question, other than, Danielle, you know what it is. Now we've become very familiar with it. We're tough on crime, though. Because we're tough on crime. Every question that anybody who opposed any of this criminal legislation ever asked down there, they should have just always looked up, held their fist up, and said, "Because I'm tough on crime.
Well,
Because
Chris,
I'm tough on crime."
I hope, you mentioned fairness a moment ago, and if you think about this, all you have to do is really put yourself in the position of someone who might be facing parole. And I think it's really not that hard to get there and say, you know what, I made a mistake. Maybe I did something very much on purpose, but I'm a changed person. And don't I deserve the opportunity to make the world a better place? Don't I deserve the opportunity, if I do everything that's marked out for me to do, to be seen as an individual and not to be blanketly dismissed, or overlooked? I think that every single person who's listening to this show and every single legislator who voted on that would have to say that if I was in a tough situation, I would want to be treated as an individual. I would not want to be treated as a number.
Yeah. Or if their son or daughter
Right.
was in this situation.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're dealing, Danielle, here with 70, 80% or 90% of the people who are paroled are getting out and going and reoffending. Just the opposite is the case. I could understand the concern for the legislation if a significant percentage of people who are out on parole are reoffending and committing crimes, but they're not. It's a small, very small percentage who reoffend. The vast majority become successful, and they're not wards of the state for the next 30 years. So again, there's just no reason for this, and it's unfortunate. And hopefully, at some point down the line, maybe this can be repealed, or maybe it can be amended to include, only not every felony crime, but maybe the more heinous ones, crimes of violence or something. But it's just wasn't very well thought out.
No, but Chris, we have to say that while we are ending on a note of the legislation that we opposed that somehow made it through, that we're still not happy about, we still have so much to be grateful for. What a different tone at the legislature. I've heard you say it. I've heard others say it. What a different outlook. I mean, here we are. We've never been in the position we're in now, where half of the legislation we supported. So of all the legislation, we supported half and we opposed half, and we did better with what we supported. Everything, all of our numbers are better than they have ever been in terms of winning. And that's what we want to do,
Absolutely.
because winning for us is winning with the Constitution, winning on the side of fairness, and honestly, the legislation matching up with what it's trying to achieve.
Yes, matching up with what it's trying to achieve. And as you said earlier, Danielle, we managed to put some amendments on some not very good legislation that makes it better, and in some cases makes it actually pretty good. So it's on the whole, I'm very pleased with the way things went down. I've got a very good feeling going forward now into the regular session, where we will be very, very busy.
We will be so busy because this regular session is from March to June, as opposed to the fiscal session that we had last year, which was quite a bit shorter than that. So we certainly have our work cut out for us. Please be on the lookout. We'll be doing a bit of a preview on the regular session, rather, in the coming days. We have, Chris, you and I have a lot of reading to do, lots and lots of homework to do.
Lots of homework to do, and I'm looking forward to doing it so that we can prepare and be fully armed to go down and defend and protect the citizens of Louisiana, and defend and protect the Constitution of the United States, our only loyalty. And we need your resources and your assistance to make sure that we are able to let the citizens in this state know exactly what their legislators are doing. We have some things coming up that are going to be quite revolutionary on behalf of the citizens, but not inexpensive to do. And so if you are a citizen of the state of Louisiana and you feel that your government has forgotten you and you feel ignored and swallowed up by big special interest groups who are more concerned about their own narrow agenda than they are about protecting Louisiana citizens, take the time to go to lacag.org, LACAG.org, and become a member of LACAG. $22 a month, $33 a month, more, whatever you are able to do on a monthly basis, because it gives us the resources to play on a level playing field. We are better fighters, and this is the analogy that I use. We are better fighters than any lobbyist in the state legislature. We are better fighters. We're more loyal. We're more tenacious. We're more faithful. But we have to make sure that we're going in with a loaded gun and a cocked gun. And that's where your financial support comes in handy, so they can look at us and say, if we don't do the right thing, this team right here, LACAG, has the resources to take us out. They have the resources to cause us a lot of pain. And believe me, it makes a huge difference. So go to LACAG, donate, and support us. I promise you, we will be faithful to you. You'll be proud of our efforts, and you'll be proud to be a part of our team.
Yes, and I want to also encourage the listeners who have not yet, please go to lacag.org and sign up for the Action Center. You can get the action alerts there. We're very excited about the promise that that holds. We've seen it already be quite effective in a couple of instances, starting with this special session on crime. We're getting a better handle on how to activate the Action Center, and I think that we're going to be very, very effective in this upcoming regular session. I'll also say, Chris, that another way people can support us is by going to the legislature and making your voice heard. Partner with us by testifying on bills that are meaningful to you. Let us know. Reach out. Send us a note at lacag.org or send us a note at freedomstate.us and let us know, hey, that you're really interested in being supportive of pro-life legislation. You're really interested in being supportive of lower taxes, whatever it is that you feel like passionate about, that you want your voice to be heard on. Join forces with us. It's going to take more than a few mouths to testify before all of the committee hearings that we foresee happening over the next couple of months. So we'll be counting on you for that as well. Also, if you would like to support the State of Freedom, please do that at freedomstate.us. You can support us on a monthly basis, or you can join and support us by advertising. If you have a business that you'd like to get the word out about, we are expanding rapidly and reaching the far corners of the state, and we're so thrilled to partner with you. So with that, Chris, anything else?
I just simply want to reiterate the State of Freedom, how important it is to support, to donate, to subscribe, and share the State of Freedom. My vision, and I think it is a grand vision and a perfectly achievable vision, is to become the platform for constitutional conservatism, for justice, for truth, for the defense of Louisiana citizens and the protection of their basic rights, the strongest, most powerful, most articulate voice in this state. And we are getting there more and more every day. 1 year from now, 6 months, a year and a half from now, with your help and your support and your sharing, we will be heard in every corner of this state. And we will make a massive difference in spreading the truth and being able to separate the truth from the lies. If you want a place where every Louisiana citizen can go and know that they are getting the truth, the real constitutional perspective, where they are challenging the big corrupt special interests and giving voice to people across the state who are loyal to the Constitution, who may want to run for office, who may want to get involved, who may want to get their vision out. That is it. That's what the State of Freedom is, and we are rapidly expanding. We're so happy to have you on our team. Please share, please subscribe, please donate. And I promise you, we're going to change this state. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, Danielle, was on the testifying. Our good friend Doss Heineman, who's a strong supporter of LeCag, mentioned yesterday to me that we need to begin inviting on the show anybody who's listening to the show to come down and to offer testimony at the legislature on bills and on issues that matter to them. Just as you mentioned a few minutes ago, a lot of people feel intimidated about testifying in front of legislators. A lot of people are scared. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to do it. Well, I can tell you right now that there's about a 99% chance that I'm going to be there. There's a very good chance that Katie's going to be there and other LeCag members. And I can promise you that you're going to be comfortable. You're going to be happy, you're going to be well protected, and you're going to be able to testify and be treated with respect if you choose to come testify at the legislature. And it will mean an awful lot to us, and it'll mean a lot to the legislators who are truly concerned about representing citizens. So please think about it, pray about it. It would be such a blessing to have you there. If you're lucky, we'll sit in the cafeteria and have a cup of coffee or be able to eat some lunch. We're a big, happy LeCag family. We battle with joy. We battle with happiness. We don't walk around with gloomy looks on our faces because we have the joy of Christ in our spirit and in our soul. So we're happy warriors. So come battle with us if you feel comfortable to do so. We would love to meet you and love to have you. And email us and let us know what you're interested in.
Yep, I love that. And I look forward to seeing lots of people join us and testify in the coming weeks. The regular session, Chris, is set to start March 11th. So we have just a few short days to get our act together, wrap our heads around, and be off to the races on this next vast swath of legislation that's coming down.
Well, I can't wait, Danielle, to get back into the fray. The preparation we're doing is going to be extensive and very meticulous. We're going to support legislation that protects Louisiana citizens, and we're going to oppose bad legislation that hurts Louisiana citizens. And we've seen some bad legislation, believe me, already. But with continued courage, desire, prayer, and because we know the Lord is going to lift us up on eagle's wings, because we know that we will run and not grow weary, and because we know that we will walk and not grow faint, each day we will take another step to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana.
Amen. Thanks, Chris.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.